So you heard the president say this the other night. He has been very clear on this as well. We may not know all the winners of elections for a few days. It takes time to count all legitimate ballots in a legal and orderly manner. That's how this is supposed to work, and it's important for us.
You just saw White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre saying today that President Biden is advising everyone to, prepare for delays. We're going to take our sweet time in counting your election results. And people in my comment section are freaking out at that, saying, why the heck does Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre already tell people there's going to be issues with the count? She's already giving us the heads up as election day is tomorrow. Let me know if you guys have voted early or if you plan to vote in person. I'm going to vote in person tomorrow. Be sure to get out there and tell your friends to get out there too. Very important midterm elections in the United States. Now, we also saw the footage that I just played of mass protests, millions taking to the streets in Brazil to protest the election results. They had an extremely popular president named Bolsonaro, who was known as the Trump of South America. He was just booted out, and mainstream media is reporting Brazil is having its own January 6th moment right now because the other guy won by just a hair, enough to kick out the sitting president, Bolsonaro. Brazilians, huge protest, as you saw. Now, there's also mass censorship in the media there, which makes everyone, escalatingly less trusting of anything they hear when they know that there's a controlled narrative. I'm hoping to bring on my friend Alan Dos Santos onto the show today. He is participating in Brazilian protests in Florida right now. Even Brazilians in the United States are taking to the streets. I saw a protest video out of New York City, Brazilians saying the stolen word, chanting it in the streets of New York City. People in Brazil feel how a lot of the American patriots felt in 2020 about Trump. And I just want to go over this for you guys and see what perhaps we can learn for our election tomorrow. Again, there's a concern about violence. I want to show you what happened to Senator Ted Cruz today. As we know, I'm here in Houston, where the Houston Astros just won the entire World Series. So there was a big parade through the streets of Houston, tens of thousands, if not more, Americans taking to the streets of Houston today, all in orange. And amid the celebration of the Astros, Senator Ted Cruz was on one of the parade floats. Here's Fox, my former employer, reporting beer can thrown U.S. Senator Ted Cruz during World Series parade. Get this, officials, quote, officials only identified the person as a male 33 for throwing the can at Senator Cruz. So they have a man under arrest, but police are protecting the identity of the beer can thrower, which I think is very interesting. Why don't you guys want to show who actually did this to Senator Ted Cruz? Let me show you the video of when it happened to Cruz just today. Oh, it's back here. Here it goes. Boom, do you see that? That's Senator Cruz in the orange. Just nails him with the beer can, but Senator Cruz fights it off with his arm unscathed, and police are not releasing the identity so far of this 33-year-old suspect who did that to Senator Cruz. Now, if someone threw a beer can at Congressman Al Green or Sheila Jackson Lee, members of Congress here in Houston, I think the suspect who assaulted a Democrat member of Congress would be named, but the suspect who just assaulted a popular Republican senator has not been named. Now, one thing that was very interesting about what is going down in Brazil is just how loud the protests are getting. You saw the numbers of people. There's this one Brazilian fitness influencer that I've followed for years. She used to be in the United States. She returned home to Brazil. Now, fitness influencers stay out of politics because it is bad for their business. Well, this influencer with like 4 million followers, she has taken up a stand, supporting Bolsonaro, which, like I said, was the sitting president that many compare to Trump, a conservative president. Even popular influencers. Now, when I saw that she was supporting Bolsonaro in Brazil, I said that, if a fitness influencer is supporting this guy, he must be pretty popular. And apparently he's extremely popular. I mean, you saw the people taking to the streets. I want to show now this same influencer. Her name's Bella Falcone. Here's her Instagram. She's now also calling out the censorship in posts like this. Her caption, "Never has silence screamed so loud." The masses in Brazil are being silenced, and they are screaming to tell the truth. We're going to show what the mainstream media is recommending for America tomorrow, because whoever comes out winners tomorrow, there's going to be people extremely upset, right? You saw an apparent Democrat just assaulted Senator Ted Cruz. I don't know. There's some Republicans who don't like him too. Could have been a Republican, but we see a lot of violence from the left. So if there is a red wave tomorrow, which, by the way, did you guys hear that even the moon is supposed to be red tonight going into tomorrow? Is that a sign from God or what? There's a red full moon forecast for tonight. Leftists have a history of violence. We've seen that a lot, especially in 2020, with many violent protests that occurred, and years prior to that, Black Lives Matter protests that have gone on for a long time. Republicans were known to be violent on January 6th, a few of them. Most of those people just stood around and got arrested for walking past a bicycle rack. But there were a couple of violent Republicans January 6th. Democrats are known as violent. So violence could break out. I mean, violence already broke out today in the Astros parade against Ted Cruz, at least one guy. So there's concerns about this. So we're going to talk about mainstream media's recommendations for how to avoid violence after tomorrow. Before we show you that one, here's Reuters reporting Brazil's election marked with disinformation network, says the Carter Center. Now, I have to be really careful with triggering the bots on my coverage of this. The bots are scanning for any messaging. Like Bella Falcone said, there is mass censorship of the topic of what went down in Brazil. And they talk about this in Reuters. Now, Reuters is reporting the Carter Center said on Friday that Brazil's presidential election was marked by a proliferation of sophisticated disinformation attacks, the voting system, and then questioning the impartiality of the National Election Authority. The U.S.-based nonprofit group, a pioneer of international election observation since the 80s, said that both the winning leftist candidate, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and far-right President Jair Bolsonaro were targets of disinformation. However, quote, our analysis of the leading fact-checking organizations indicated that most attacks targeted the Lula campaign, it said in a statement. So Reuters is reporting most of the disinformation, as they call it nowadays, was against the guy who just won the election against Bolsonaro. Well, there's always been disinformation in the mainstream media. There's always been hit pieces and lies spread about candidates in order to try to win. Information warfare in elections is totally normal. But what we're seeing happen now is that mass censorship is sweeping Brazil. There was a new commitment from the Supreme Court there to censor out at a record pace, delete various posts from social media. I know a lot of video of the protests there was stripped down. I'm hearing that YouTube is making sure to delete any dissenting opinions of what the heck happened. But they are blaming a lot of the disinformation on Bolsonaro, saying that Bolsonaro is one of the key spreaders of disinformation, which has caused Brazilians to go out to the streets to protest. Alan Dos Santos was supposed to join me for the show. Like I said, he's in the streets in Florida right now, where Americans are also protesting what happened in Brazil. I want to show you guys what the mainstream media is recommending. I have this article from The Hill. Effects of Brazil's January 6th moment, like Americans, will linger. Now I have to take the article back up the page because if I show all the trigger words, YouTube will delete this video that I have, and I will potentially lose my entire page. Maybe I shouldn't have done a YouTube on this topic, but here we are, just to preserve my page. Yeah, but I'm here to tell stories, cut through the mainstream media narratives and try to find some truth in there. So The Hill is reporting, when it became clear that Brazilian President Bolsonaro, also known as the Trump of the tropics, would fail to get reelected, fears of a Brazilian January 6th began to grow louder. How would a president who had been spreading false allegations of election F word, and who said that he would only accept the results of the election if he won, how would he react to losing the election in a well-known challenger? And then they go on to compare Bolsonaro to Trump, how Trump sat calmly by while Americans duked it out with police officers at the Capitol. And then, several hours later, Trump finally tells people to go home. Well, they said Bolsonaro was even worse. He waited 2 days to tell anyone to get out of the streets. So you saw the millions who took to the streets. Now, The Hill goes on to say, why did Bolsonaro take so long to make a pronouncement? One possible reason is that he was waiting to see how the protests that followed the election would play out, what kind of support he could have in contesting the results. But the protests did not gain broader traction, and no relevant media, religious, military, or political figures spoke out in support of the protests. The Hill's saying here that the protests did not gain traction. Did you see the crowds there? It's really freaking interesting that The Hill said there's no traction with these protests, and they don't show. Brazil didn't show the big, huge crowd. Flights were screwed up because of protests on some of the highways, the trucks taking to the streets, fires in some of the roadways. It says truckers supportive of President Bolsonaro's block a highway to protest his election loss. So it's been chaos there. It says here, the powerful president of the Chamber of Deputies, a strong supporter of Bolsonaro, declared that, quote, the will of the majority, as it is expressed in the polls, can never be contested. So he's saying, look, we see that the majority doesn't like Bolsonaro. Even though it seems like the majority does, even though those are the people out in the streets in the millions, really he lost, this guy's saying. So, the majority has spoken, so let's move on. And that was actually, like they said, a former supporter of Bolsonaro. So what we're seeing a really similar situation where some Republicans were ditching Trump after he, was supposedly beat by Biden. Okay, so The Hill goes on to say, one lesson Americans may take from elections in Brazil is that when dealing with incumbent would-be authoritarian presidents seeking re-election, the speed of the vote counting matters. So The Hill is saying having a nationalized system of electronic voting used for over a quarter of a century, Brazilians could know the election results a few hours after polls closed, before Bolsonaro could muster a single word. World leaders, with Biden ahead, had already congratulated his challenger. So they're saying here that it would have been worse in Brazil had they not been able to report the results really early. The protests would have been stronger against the results. We see how strong those protests are in Brazil now. The Hill is minimalizing those protests, saying, yeah, there wasn't much momentum there, and there wasn't momentum there because they got their vote results really quickly due to all the electronic machines. So they are recommending that Americans speed it up as well as far as vote counting. You saw Karine Jean-Pierre saying that she doesn't think we're going to be able to speed it up, that she's already predicting a very slow vote count. Now, I want to show you guys some of the early voting turnout for the past couple of days in a couple of states. I told you how there was a huge early vote turnout. And when I went to vote on election day in 2020, I was the only person at the polls. It's a little different this year in Texas anyways. Take a look at the turnout.
Turnout statewide and for the 2022 midterm election, that's that one on the far right there. Tell us.
So the darker purple is 2022. The lighter purple is 2020. You can see 2020 right here. It was 67% of registered voters voted early. This report, as of last Friday when this report came out, vote turnout, that was the last day of early voting. It was only 27% of registered voters in Texas. This is Texas. Had voted early. That's less than half of the early voters in 2020. About 70% of registered voters voting period is fairly normal, I think. As I recall, in the 2020 election, it was something like 70-something% of registered voters ended up voting period in the 2020 election. So for 67% of them to have voted early in 2020, you can see then that would only leave more or less 3% who actually turned out to vote in person in 2020. It's hugely different in 2022, although let's just remind ourselves that not everyone who's registered to vote is going to vote in a midterm. Midterms are less exciting, and it's not a presidential election. So a lot of the people who are registered probably will just never show up, but we will see how that actually looks after tomorrow. Now, I want to show you how different of story it is in battleground state of Georgia. Take a look.
As early in-person voting wrapped up last night, nearly 2/3 of that total have already cast a ballot. Gabriel Sterling with the Secretary of State's office tweeted, as of 9 p.m. last night, more than 2.4 million people in Georgia have voted in Tuesday's election. Friday's tally at the polls, according to Sterling's tweet, was more than 231,000 voters. This was by far the highest one-day total for early in-person voting. With Friday numbers, the total number of people voting early in person was more than 2.2 million. That is a midterm record. And if you live in Cobb County, you'll have a little more time to vote before Tuesday. Well, that's if you're
All right, so why do you guys think so many people,
to...
hold on. Why do you think so many people in Georgia are voting early and much fewer people in Texas are voting early? If it's the way it happened in Dinesh D'Souza's documentary where he shows the surveillance video of it happening, you know, if shenanigans are happening in a key battleground state like Georgia, the shenanigans when they happen early, like Dinesh broadcast, well, then that's why there would be more early results in Georgia, if you can read between my YouTube bot lines. All right. The shenanigans that happen in D'Souza's documentary have to happen early the way they happened on the surveillance video. That would be why there'd be a bigger turnout. But we don't know if there are shenanigans. And a good way to tell, well, one way to perhaps tell whether the shenanigans happened is if you show up and vote yourself, so you can't have someone else accidentally voting for you. If you show up and you find out you've already voted, then you need to document that, blast it out there. You make sure that the key people who prosecute this sort of thing know about it, and then you make sure members of the media know about it. Now, I will guarantee you that the mainstream media will never report however much evidence you send them. Like I said, I come from the inside of Fox, and sources, witnesses on the ground were sending me that hardcore evidence that I could verify and say, yes, this is evidence of shenanigans, anomalies. Yet I was not able to let the viewers know about that. Fox shut down that coverage. So that doesn't mean if you show up to the polls and find out that someone already voted for you, that doesn't mean you shouldn't reach out to the mainstream media. Try to get their attention, but also send it to alternative reporters. Send it to me, people who are now free to cover that sort of stuff. And we can document this and let more people know that this is happening. Because what I've been gathering, when a lot of people say, here's the thing with voter shenanigans, okay? It's really hard to prove this sort of crime. It's really difficult. And So how does this sort of crime happen? If you connect the dots that I have seen, I get these little bits and pieces of what the heck went down in 2020, and how did some of this go down? Just the evidence that I've witnessed. Okay, the surveillance video that was shown in D'Souza's documentary of people carrying stacks of envelopes and sliding them in that box at weird hours of the night, taking pictures themselves doing it to make sure they're documenting so they can get paid. You can see that crime happening. Where are the people getting those envelopes? They're getting them. You can harken back to my coverage of Harry Waite in Wisconsin, the man who exposed how the people are getting those stacks of envelopes. What they do is you go onto the state's official Secretary of State voting site online, and instead of you registering to get an envelope in the mail, you register someone else. All you have to do is put their name and birthday in on the official election website, and that person's envelope will come to you. You do that to 1,000 people, and then you have a pretty big stack of envelopes that you then carry to that box. And that is how some of this has played out. Very sadly, Harry Waite proved it and got thrown in jail for showing how easy it is to do that. So what can you do to avoid this happening again? It takes, just like it takes every person voting to actually get someone who represents the people, it takes every person filling in their puzzle piece whose vote may have been compromised. Okay, I'm trying to speak cautiously here on YouTube. Now, someone made a list of things that you can do, really important things to do tomorrow on Election Day if you're showing up in person. And I want to read this list because I think it's just a great idea. So many states now, more and more states are sending out mail-in ballots across the state. It is the law that every person gets a ballot, whether they want it or not. So if you live in one of those states and you wanted to vote in person, what you do is you take the ballot with you. Don't open your ballot. Don't mail it in. Go in person. Show it to the election judge. Okay, check in to cast your vote. Make sure it hasn't been cast yet. Okay, make absolute sure it hasn't been cast yet. Once you know your vote was not cast, then you can open your ballot and vote with a blue ballpoint pen. Check your ballot 3 times to make sure that you voted correctly, and then place your ballot in the ballot box without the envelope. They said, do not use a machine to cast your vote. If your vote was already cast, ask to speak to a supervisor. If you find out that your vote was already cast and you haven't voted yet, speak to a supervisor at the election location, the polling place tomorrow. Show them your unopened ballot and explain that you were told that your vote was already cast, which, by the way, is criminal. Demand that they file a complaint of the F word for the crime. Identity theft is also included. So you can file a complaint for the F crime and the identity theft crime. Ask that they include a photocopy of the envelope used to commit such a theft of a vote if it was vote by mail. Okay, if they refuse, call the sheriff to file an identity theft complaint. Get a copy of the complaint. So demand that they, file a criminal complaint, because a lot of this stuff never even gets documented, and then you have to demand a copy to prove that this complaint was actually filed. It says keep your unopened ballot as evidence and do not surrender your ballot. So you have the proof so that no gaslighting can happen, so that nobody can cover up and say this never happened. You have your unopened vote, and then you have the proof that it shows that you already voted when you obviously didn't, because you have it right here. Okay, that is how you can tell a true story after and let people know we're not making this up. This isn't some wacky theory. Okay, And because believe me, the last election in California, I got Californians hitting me up saying I was told, I showed up to vote and I was told I already voted. Okay, so then you write an affidavit stating only the facts of what happened to have a personal account added to the evidence. When you go to vote tomorrow, check for Wi-Fi. Take a screenshot to expose the Wi-Fi connection. These spots are not supposed to be connected to Wi-Fi, okay? Take video for your records. Go with friends. You and your friends go, videotape your experience and document it, okay? So just do your small part in documenting the shenanigans that we've been getting more evidence actually happen, yet we're not able to talk about and show here on YouTube, okay? Because just like in Brazil, we're getting immense censorship here. Now, Alan Dos Santos, who I was going to have on my show, but there were tech issues today, he is the Brazilian Rush Limbaugh. So you know how I said Bolsonaro is like the Brazilian Trump? Alan Dos Santos is the Brazilian Rush Limbaugh. He's a big, right-wing media personality there, but they have censored him on a whole nother level. It's interesting, the American made social media companies are actually collaborating with the Brazilian Supreme Court to delete Alan Dos Santos from existence. He just told me today that I guess he's on his 20th, I believe he said he just lost his 20th Instagram account. So he keeps creating profiles, and the government of Brazil keeps finding his profiles, telling Instagram, and then Instagram deletes that. It's in the news that is how it goes down. Brazilian Supreme Court, in collaboration with Instagram, are deleting any right-wing opinions or supporters of Bolsonaro in Brazil, so that Brazil can be as leftist as humanly possible. And the media today are reporting that they have amped up, the government of Brazil has amped up their work with the social media companies to delete posts at a record pace. Now, I predict that this will happen in America too after tomorrow. If there's any shenanigans, that's why it's like, dude, me doing this video on the topic on YouTube today is risky for me. I don't know. But because they're going to do sweeping surveillance of any coverage of our election and of Brazil's election, so that the social media companies regulate the world when it comes to us understanding what the people really want, so we can be gaslit on a whole nother level. So that if there's shenanigans, you will never see any evidence of the shenanigans, so that every media outlet can report without proof. If you've read any articles of any evidence, covering those who are trying to show the evidence, but the evidence gets censored. The media says, so-and-so makes these claims without proof. The only way you can say there's without proof is with the help of mass censorship to censor all the proof. It's insanity. So I predict that the social media companies will collaborate with America on election censorship after tomorrow, the same way that they have been doing with Brazil the past week. And it's really stunning to see. And that's why I think it's perhaps important to check out some alternative outlets. I know that in Brazil, Getter is a big, very popular alternative, uncensored social media site there. Here in America, we've got Getter, we've got Truth Social, we've got Telegram. Fortunately, there are growing uncensored platforms, and hopefully Twitter now. We'll see if Twitter really sticks to the anti-censorship thing that Elon Musk promised. I know he is actually now censoring some leftists on Twitter, which is really interesting, but it's still censorship. I say let's see all of it. Let's see what the leftists are saying and what the rightists are saying. Anyway, with that being said, I am going to check your comment section. Oh, speaking of True Social, that's where True the Vote and Greg Phillips have been posting. The update on that is that Greg Phillips and Catherine Engelbrecht of True the Vote have been released from jail today. Their attorneys did appeal their arrest in the Connect versus True the Vote lawsuit. So after spending a week in jail, they were released today. They posted on their Truth socials. and they are planning on a locals live stream this evening. If you listen to my podcast with the lawyer, the legal expert who has known Judge Hoyt for many years, he predicted this. He said if they, the judge is simply following the procedure of you have to reveal who saw evidence that's part of a temporary restraining order. This is the very early stages of Connect versus True the Vote. They haven't even gotten into the evidence about Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office in regards to Eugene Yu getting arrested, which corroborates True the Vote's claims. The legal expert said that's likely coming later, but right now we're in the very beginning stages of True the Vote defamation lawsuit from Connect. And the very first thing in this lawsuit is that temporary restraining order. Well, we figure out the truth between these two. The main thing is that the word is that Connect just doesn't want to release the Social Security numbers of its staffers to anyone further. So in order to promise that that does not get released, they need a lockdown on the data. Whoever has it needs to turn it over and reveal who they are. So the first step is True the Vote and Greg Phillips revealing who all saw the data that was supposedly connected to a Chinese server, and then making sure that each of those people do not release the Social Security numbers. So that's why the judge wanted the 3 people in the hotel room unmasked so that they can commit to not releasing the sensitive personal data of election workers while they duke out the lawsuit. That was the beginning stages. And my legal expert says that Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office and Eugene Yu being arrested will probably come into the lawsuit later. And it probably will be a huge part of Catherine Gregg probably winning this defamation lawsuit against them if the evidence that LA DA's office has lines up with what Catherine Gregg has. So this will be interesting. So just a heads up, that is just the beginning stages. And I think it did get overblown when you're just seeing that these people who work on it, making sure that our vote really counts get thrown in jail. At a glance, you look at that and say, whoa, our government is really corrupt. But it's simply a beginning procedure, a beginning step in the defamation lawsuit of them refusing to release the name of a person who saw sensitive data. Just in order, and the judge gave them the option of quietly releasing it to him, and they didn't want to release that name whatsoever to anyone, which was a violation of a federal judge. So that's just the law. If you violate the federal judge, you go to jail. So I think, I don't know, if you look at this in perspective, I think the arrest of Catherine and Greg is not as, astounding as you might think. I know they got a lot of publicity and started offering T-shirts associated with this arrest, which I'm not hating on. I know everyone needs to fundraise, okay? But the arrest may have helped them, Catherine and Greg, financially, which they're a nonprofit. So anyway, I'm just keeping an eye on that for you guys as well. Now I want to, oh my gosh, Alan just came on. I see him. Okay, this is Alan Dos Santos, the highly censored Alan out of Brazil, who's now in America in exile, protesting in Florida. Alan joins me. Hello.
Hello. I'm sorry that I just arrived here after.
Wow.
There are a lot of cars. They're saying no to communism.
They're saying no to
we'll let them
communism?
here, and I'll talk to you here, Ivory. Sorry.
What part of Florida are you in?
Orlando.
Wow.
Yes.
I think there's a big Brazilian population there.
Oh, it's a huge community here. There's a statue of Brazilian soccer here. That's Orlando.
Alan, you really have a sense of what's going down in Brazil. Can you tell us why millions took to the streets there without saying words that YouTube will delete me from
No,
YouTube
don't
for
worry.
saying. But just tell me what's going on there.
Well, basically, since the military regime ended in Brazil, we had another constitution in 1988. That was our sixth constitution, different from United States that had just one constitution. It's a lot of Brazilians supporting here. Sorry about that.
No
Uh,
worries.
Different from United States, Brazil passed through a lot of a dictatorship, fascist one back in 40s, a military regime back in 60 that stayed in Brazil until 1988. So when 1988 came out, Ford Foundation funded a group of intellectual Marxists in Brazil called SEBRAP. It's with C. I can give you all the details later. And all these socialists, they divided in different parties and groups just to turn Brazilian as a socialist country. But they did not got succeed because Bolsonaro stood up in 2018, inspired by Donald Trump in 2016. And then he showed to the people everything that we were not, allowed to say, like 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 what's happening right now in America. You are in YouTube, you are in a platform that's supposed to be free of
Yeah.
press, and there are some words and concepts that you're not allowed to talk, even if the United States Constitution allow you to do that. So Bolsonaro got elected in 2018. That was really hard. He got a lot of things to make Brazil better and greater. But the problem is, all the socialists were so mad at him because he got closer to Trump, closer to the United States, closer to Israel by the first time. And then, since Bolsonaro got the huge popular support from Brazilian people, they found a way to rip them out from the power. And they started censoring journalists who were supporting him and the people, congressmen, even Elon Musk said that he will take a close look on the censorship in Brazil right now. I don't know if you saw that. Paulo
Wow.
Figueiredo, our friend
Uh-huh.
of us, he tagged Elon Musk, and he said that he would take a closer look on it. And censoring people, uh, debunking channels, like destroying my YouTube channel. I used to have 1.3 million followers. My channel in Brazil used to be bigger than CNN on streaming on YouTube. And then after that, we we can't trust on the results because imagine if you have the winner that cannot go to the streets and celebrate with his voters, right? Lula can't do that, and all the losers are on the street complaining about the results. So we do not,
Wow.
we can't say uh, something like fraudulent election properly or technically because we can't take a look at this. We just have machine votes in Brazil. So we can't audit it.
It's unauditable.
Exactly. Because it's all machine.
It's all machines. Okay, that's
We do not
that's
have
concerning.
papers.
And then and that mixed with the censorship. When there's censorship, you are told that you are a part of the minority, and you might be a part of the silent majority, but you never know censorship. I want to show you a video out of Brazil from June of this year, I believe it was, protesting the censorship then as well.
This is a war on religion. This is a war on the children. They give you the cure with the sickness. This is a war on tradition.
Their hands over their mouths in protest. My friend Jimmy Levy posted that. Shout out to Jimmy and his music, but he's been documenting Brazilian protests, showing the drone video of the massive crowds there. What do you think? I mean, how are people going to come out of this, Alan, with the amount of censorship that's in place?
I honestly have no idea how we can change it, but we want it and we will do it somehow. You saw the date. In Brazil is different. We put day first, month later, and a year. Okay. This instruction I gave to people through WhatsApp audio because I knew the media wouldn't report everything that's happening in Brazil. If you are in Brazil right now, sitting down in your couch, you turn on the TV, you are not going to see anything. It's like there is nothing happening.
Right.
Nothing
Well,
happening.
yeah,
And then
I just read the article from The Hill that said, like, there were a little bit of protesting, but all is well now, and that's because the machines calculated things quickly. And so, everyone, including Biden, ran to support Bolsonaro's opponent. So America needs to copy that. But they were acting like all is well in Brazil.
So, and then I told people, you need to be your news. You need to be journalists. You need to be reported right now. I don't care if you are not used to that. You need to learn from me right now. It's a quickly course, And
We need an army of citizen journalists.
Yeah, I told them you need to say every video you record, you need to say the day, the time, and the place you are at, and saying what's going on. Then they started to put the days, because all the media would take every video and say, no, this is old. This is before the election. Yeah, this is an old video. This is before the election results, Trying to convince people at home that nothing was happening, nothing was going on. And there was a journalist. There was a journalist in Brazil. The protest was huge. Not like here in Orlando, there's a few people, but in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, was so huge, so huge. The journalist, she walked like a mile away and started recording, saying, "Oh, there are a few people here protesting." They run away from the people and they keep far away from them and say, "Yeah, it's not huge here. Don't see the noisy protest and so forth." That's it.
That's nuts.
So we
just
did
went
not
through.
know.
We went through 2 years of gaslighting from the media like none other, and from politicians. And I was hoping we were coming out of that. But then you see, the media trying to say that videos of protests are old and things like this. And the reporting on crowd size. I mean, I just think back to the anti-mandate protest in DC that I covered earlier this year, and the tens of thousands who took to the streets of DC, and then the vast difference in reporting of numbers from the mainstream media versus alternative journalists who were maybe there and saw it themselves.
I would like to add something for your audience.
Sure.
They need to understand how important your job is, because what is happening in Brazil, happening in Venezuela, happening in Colombia, happening in Argentina, happening in Mexico. It's happening somehow in America, and this can be your future if you do not support real journalism. This is a very strong message that I would like to give for your audience, Ivory. If they do not support independent journalists, nobody will know and understand what is really going on. There is no country in the world there is no country in the world with a First and Second Amendment like in America. So here you can protect yourself with the Constitution in your hand and your weapons in your hand too. You can bear your weapons and defend your country, defend your state, defend your flag. We do not have that in Brazilian Constitution. We do not have that in Colombia Constitution. We do not have that in Chile Constitution, and so forth. So be aware of this, and support in real journalism, because there are a lot of people that have no idea what's going on, and they just need a truly information, and then they wake up,
Right. I totally agree. And I know that they're trying as hard as they can in Brazil to censor you, Alan. I think you said you're on your 20th Instagram account?
Yeah, 20. They're a movie here. I need to follow them. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 20 account.
They just deleted another one? Wow.
They deleted my 19. Yeah.
Wow. So where can people find you now?
Say that again, sorry.
What's your social media handle now so my viewers can follow?
The best way to find me is on Locals. So it's Alan Dos Santos, Alan with double L, Alan Dos Santos .locals.com. That's the best way. Because even Getter banned me.
Getter banned you? What the heck?
Obeying the Supreme Court in Brazil.
That is so freaking disappointing. They obeyed the Brazilian Supreme Court. Dude, I gotta hit up Jason Miller again and be like, what the heck is going on, dude? That's so disappointing that Getter did that. Wow. Can we see your crowd one more time? Let's see what they're chanting.
Show you them.
What are they saying?
They are asking for army to help us in Brazil.
Wow. You said there were potential armed in Brazil. Are they having armed conflicts in Brazil right now?
No, not yet, thank God, because we are very peaceful. This is why we do not have guns, we do not have anything, so the communists are taking power, and we are asking for the military to help us at least to have another election in Brazil.
That's incredible. Well, Alan, thank you so much. I'll let you go, but I really appreciate you tuning in to my YouTube.
Wake up. You can be the next. Wake up as soon as possible.
We got to wake up. Thanks, Alan. We'll talk to you later. We got to wake up. Preserve America. That is nuts. And Getter is even censoring Alan Dos Santos at the command of the Supreme Court in Brazil. That's disappointing. But he's on Locals. Thanks, JJ, for the super chat, the super sticker. Appreciate your help with my independent journalism. These little donations, each one helps a lot to support me. I appreciate that. Thank you, Matt, for the super chat. Quote, thanks for covering Brazil. You're taking a risk doing this, but that's why we are here. Also, that's a really clear sounding mic. Oh, this one is good because we had audio issues in the beginning. Thanks for bearing with my tech issues. I'm not a tech expert. Yeah, so guys, if my YouTube gets deleted, please go follow all my other social media down in my description. Description of this video has my alternative social media. I'm on pretty much every platform. And yeah, you supporting my news over there really helps. I just joined up with Unified to do uncensored videos on their platform. If you want to try them out, down in my link in description. Checking your comments. Gosh, thanks, Mark, for the super sticker, the $10 donation. That means a lot. I appreciate the support. Just checking the rest of your comments. Independent journalists are the ones left to fill in the blanks. I think there's a lot of good-hearted corporate news journalists who are fast asleep and don't fully realize how much they're being controlled. They don't fully realize that they're literally not allowed to cover certain topics. Oh, I just never get assigned to it. Oh, my boss shot down my coverage of that, said I shouldn't cover it. But who knows why? My boss just said not to cover it because the audience doesn't think that's interesting. And all the BS gaslighting that you're told as a corporate journalist and you believe it, these people are freaking brainwashed. It is a brainwashed cult in the corporate news. And a lot of them are simply still numb to the idea that they are controlled opposition to the people right now. Instead of being connected to their viewers, they are the controlled opposition of the people in the corporate news right now. So we've got to wake those corporate news journalists up, and it'll help wake them up one by one when you're sending these journalists cold hard evidence of what's happening in America. Like I said, if you went out there, this is just what I'm saying. If you go out there tomorrow to cast your vote and you find that your vote has already been cast, you carefully document what just happened, show that evidence to a corporate news reporter. That reporter is going to pitch the story to their boss. Then they'll watch their boss shut it down. And each reporter seeing truth be shut down will help to wake up the corporate news reporters. Especially, imagine if every American did that. Every American who finds out that they've already cast their ballot tomorrow, and they each report it to the corporate news, and the corporate news gets flooded with people saying, here's my evidence, very plainly laid out. Here's actual evidence. Please let the people know. And they keep getting that. It's going to wake up people inside the corporate news to realize, oh, this wasn't a big lie, was it? Stuff is not a big lie. Shenanigans do happen. So it's important that you do your part in documenting what actually goes down tomorrow. Not everyone is going to witness a shenanigan, but people who do need to step up to the plate and speak up. Be your own citizen journalist, like Alan Dos Santos said. Learn the trigger words so that you can work around them like I am. We didn't do a very good job in this video. This video might get deleted. But if you can outsmart the bots and expand your vocabulary and say the truth in a different way, be your own citizen journalist, say, hey, this is some monkey business that just happened, and here's how it happened. Don't use the election F word. That'll get your video deleted. But I'm just saying, in the era of TikTok, you can be a citizen journalist very easily, just plainly documenting your evidence tomorrow, regardless of whether the mainstream media does or not. Get it out there on TikTok. It'll go viral. But you gotta use you gotta use code words to avoid the trigger words, so that you can beat the censorship and get the truth to the people as a citizen journalist documenting the world around you. It's the era of citizen journalism and independent journalism. With that being said, I am going too long. We're going to shut this one down, and we will see you guys tomorrow with some election coverage. See you then.